When we hear a highly articulate, top-scoring conversational response, it sounds spontaneous, but that fluency often relies on a discernible structural framework. Spoken language operates on a hidden architectural blueprint that we can systematically decode. To analyze how this framework functions, we are going to look at 4 distinct conversational paradigms regarding personal transit experiences and automotive perspectives. These source texts reveal a consistent pattern. The most robust responses do not rely on random conversational tangents. Instead, they adhere to a specific structural foundation. This diagram outlines a tripartite architecture, a reliable baseline for generating linguistic complexity. The first layer is the direct declaration, establishing the speaker's position. The second is rationale expansion, providing logical justification. Finally, concrete exemplification connects abstract reasoning to an observable, real-world scenario. Internalizing this 3-part architecture allows a speaker to elevate a standard utterance into a logically sound and structured linguistic performance. We can observe this architecture at work by dissecting memory-based frameworks. Let's examine how the source texts structure childhood travel preferences. In the first affirmative response, the speaker relies on lexical intensifiers, specifically the phrase absolutely loved, to set an immediate emotional baseline. This syntax tree isolates the sensory observations building the rationale. The phrase look out of the window maps visual observation to excitement. Finally, the exemplification layer uses the phrase for example to ground that feeling in a concrete scenario, driving to a grandparent's house. However, a negative variance response requires a different structural dependency to achieve similar complexity. Instead of relying on sensory observation, the second speaker uses a conditional dependency clause, I only enjoyed it if. Introducing the constraint between short versus long journeys creates syntactic nuance while maintaining the underlying tripartite formula. Regardless of the sentiment, the structural requirement remains functionally consistent. The text succeeds because it anchors emotion to either a specific sensory input or a precise conditional boundary. This same logic applies to the vocabulary parameters used for categorizing modern vehicle types. Notice the semantic field assigned to electric vehicles. The text aligns ecological terms like environmentally friendly and acoustic terms like quiet to support the descriptor futuristic. For compact city cars, the framework shifts from abstract term sets to physical actions. Specific mechanical verbs, park, control, and maintain, define the precise value proposition of the compact car in a crowded urban environment. This stands in contrast to the different set of descriptors utilized to justify the preference for SUVs. The text establishes a correlation between a physical attribute, having more space, and a resulting psychological outcome, feeling comfortable. It repeats this logic immediately afterward, linking a higher seating position to the feeling of being safer. Linguistic range is demonstrated by mapping precise operational verbs to distinct categorical functions, rather than leaning on generic adjectives. This mapping technique also extends to the assignment of agency regarding the driver versus passenger question. The passive rationale framework justifies the state of being a passenger by the negation of responsibility. On the left side of this matrix, the text utilizes specific negating phrases, don't have to focus, and don't worry about traffic rules, to defend the passenger. This passive framework is opposed by the active rationale mapped out for the driver response. To defend the driver role, the speaker deploys executive control verbs. They decide the route, they decide the speed, and they decide when to stop. Citing this executive control provides the logical scaffolding for the concluding sentiment, a sense of independence. The third response provides a synthesis, bridging both the active and passive states. It uses a situational dependency clause. It depends, but for long trips, manipulating the scale of time to justify alternating between executive control and passive acceptance. Demonstrating a locus of control, whether embracing it behind the wheel or rejecting it from the passenger seat, serves as a core mechanism for generating a complex defense of a preference. The final testing ground for this architectural model is how the text manages external conflict, specifically the frustration of a traffic jam. The text outlines 3 separate methodologies to reframe this negative experience. The first is active distraction through specific audio inputs. In this flowchart, we see how citing music or podcasts serves as a tool to deliberately alter the perception of a delay. Structurally, the text connects audio input to a distortion of time, stating that listening makes the waiting time feel shorter. The second methodology relies on digital engagement and the rapid sequencing of specific actions. By listing out the micro-actions of replying, scrolling, and reading, the speaker reframes a stagnant situation into something bearable. The third and most complex pathway is cognitive reframing. This logic equation suggests that getting angry does not make the traffic move faster. By acknowledging that anger is useless in this context, the speaker pivots to external observation, detailing shops, people, and small visual details. These linguistic structures do not merely complain about external delays, they reframe them into observable, cognitive, or digital tasks. Looking back at this analysis, we can now observe the true scale of the linguistic framework we have just reverse-engineered. The core structure remains the tripartite architecture: declaration, rationale, and exemplification. Syntactic variation, specifically the deployment of conditionals and comparisons, acts as the mortar to weave these layers together. And precise lexical mapping, deploying operational verbs rather than generic adjectives, colors that framework with specific meaning. Internalizing this architectural blueprint is a significant step toward achieving true linguistic sophistication. To master frameworks like this, you need an organization that treats language with analytical rigor. This analysis is brought to you by the IELTS FOCUS 084-770-5973, an English center specializing in advanced structural IELTS preparation. Fluency emerges from the deliberate execution of structural logic.